Hi, Academic Astrologer here, and I'm here to talk to you today about synastry. Now, one thing I love about Hellenistic astrology and the whole sign astrology system is that I feel like it really brings more depth to astrology. So when I was newer to astrology, I knew about sun signs, and I knew just the basics of synastry, that if you have, I saw two groups of astrology signs. So I saw the air and fire signs as compatible, and then I saw the water and earth signs as compatible. Or, air, air, fire, fire, or water, water, earth, earth. But kind of those sets being compatible with each other. And so sometimes I would see couples and I knew that their sun signs were not very compatible. I didn't know a lot of the specifics, but I knew roughly that their sun signs were not compatible. But I feel like Hellenistic astrology has opened up a much wider variety of what compatible is. But the other strange thing is that I feel like there was times in the past that people were not compatible at all, but somehow they made things work. And that is really interesting because I feel like nowadays people just have the slightest incompatibility or the slightest difference, and then they're just ready to throw in the towel and try something different. Like, you'll have one person and they're like, they're a good provider, but I feel like I've lost myself, and therefore I think we should separate. And it's like, it just seems a little bit odd, but I'm not in their shoes. But that being said, I feel like there's a lot of different varieties of synastry that you can see, that there's not just a cut and dry like formula, that it's just the sun sign compatibility or just the moon sign compatibility, etc. So I looked at some of the groupings of some of my family and friends that I know, and I also have listened to various thoughts on compatibility, and I think, one thing to look at is Venuses. So again, I still like looking at those groupings that I talked about, water, earth, versus air, fire. And so I like looking at the Venus. Like, do they have similar love languages to each other? For instance, is it both a Cancer Venus? Is it a Cancer and Scorpio Venus? I feel like, again, you see some of the same compatibilities. And it breaks down, if you know astrology, it breaks down a little bit more cleanly if you know, in other words, that it might be forming a sextile, a trine, versus a square, or other harsh aspect. Also, how do the moons, how compatible are they with each other? Is it, for instance, Gemini and Aries, or Gemini and Cancer? They would be what is considered averse if you had a Gemini and Cancer moon, so they may have trouble understanding each other's desires. Also, Mercury, how do they communicate? Are they not very good communicators, or do they communicate very smoothly? But then you can also see some other pairings that are very interesting, such as the sun and moon. So in other words, somebody's internal desires match somebody's external, what they their purpose in life. So it's kind of this blending of desire versus purpose. Also, perhaps the sun, moon are conjunct the ascendant. And when I say conjunct, I mean we could be seeing a variety of things. A sign-based conjunction is a great start. It might be within 3 degrees. That's awesome to have a conjunction within 3 degrees. Also, you might want to check the decan. Is it the first 10 degrees, the second decan, the third decan? If they're in the same decan, they may have similar qualities to each other. And frankly, any planet within the same decan, they're going to feel some familiarity, even if it's differing planets. Now, of course, if you have a malefic, then it may be that that conjunction is not conducive, but it may. So let's say perhaps that you have someone's Mars on someone else's MC. They might be a driving force in their career. Let's say if you see Saturn on the ascendant, maybe they're sort of a anchor for that person, and they help bring stability to that person. So it's not necessarily bad to see a malefic involved in the conjunction. Now, one time I did have a dating experience that was not very great, and my Mars is in the 7th house, and the other person's Saturn was conjunct my Mars. And it is just hilarious because it was definitely 1 foot on the brake, 1 foot on the pedal. And that's Mars-Saturn conjunction. And so it was just like our whole relationship was like brake and then pedal, brake, pedal. And it was not a great relationship. So that was not a great conjunction. But maybe we might like to see someone's Venus on the other person's ascendant, where what they value in a person is exhibited in that person. Maybe someone's sun or moon conjunct someone else's ascendant. So again, maybe what they're feeling internally or their purpose in life is conjunct what that person is exhibiting. So I looked at one particular couple that had longevity, and one person had a stellium in Scorpio, while the other person had their ascendant in Scorpio, and vice versa. So the other person had a stellium in Virgo, and the other person had their ascendant in Virgo. And I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. Just that high, when you have a stellium, you just have tons of energy in that sign. And just to see them flip-flop like that, I just thought that was so cool. And perhaps they might have one person's part of fortune conjunct the other person's sun or moon. Maybe one person's moon is conjunct the other person's Venus. One person's Venus conjunct the other person's Mercury. So there could be lots of different pairings, and that works out in different ways. But I think, they're still feeling that synastry. They're still feeling like a familiarity with that person. So one couple I looked at, I just have been staring at their charts, trying to figure out what brought them together. And because they did not have compatible suns. And so I did see, though, that one person had 4 personal planets in Aries. So they were a Pisces sun, which is so interesting that they're Pisces, but they have this really strong Aries energy. So that's another reason why I just love the whole sign, because like if you would have said, oh, they have a Pisces sun, and you just have all these connotations of what that means, and yet this person has a very, very strong Aries energy. And so the other person had 2 planets in Aries, Venus and Mercury. So they both had, I believe, Venus in Aries. So you may not have initially seen compatibility, but then the more and more you think about it, it's like, oh, that's strong Aries energy. Also, one person had a Saturn North Node conjunction. Maybe they're helping each other towards their destiny. I saw one couple didn't have compatible suns, but they did have compatible moons. They had Venus compatible, 3 planets in Aries, matching the other person's Aries moon. So again, like that, and I think in this case it was like one person was a Pisces sun, one person was an Aries sun. So they would look not conjunct on the surface, but then you see that Aries energy matching each other. And then, like I said, I saw this one couple that had longevity, like married so many years. And I'm just looking at their chart, and there's just very little in common. So I think that that's interesting because they were of the silent generation, I believe. So different generations, they may have different standards for what is an acceptable happiness in a marriage, because they were very happy, and they were married for many, 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 many years. Basically died within a few years of each other at almost 100. So very, very happy together. And yet not a lot of compatibility signs. So we just expect more now? We feel we have so many options, so we should find something perfect. But, maybe, there's usually not perfection anyways. Like there's usually some amount of you choose to stay in the relationship even though there might be hard moments, Or I heard one person say that you could be married to a couple of people during a lifetime, and sometimes it's the same person. So we may even change and go through permutations in our life, but you choose to stick with it throughout it all. But if you have any couples charts you'd like to send me, I'm kind of curious at this moment in time to see those compatibility patterns. Again, the Academic Astrologer, and I hope you have a great day.